أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My dear brother Jawad, I need my markers. Yes. Inshallah, today we want to talk about the topic of adoption in Islam. In the Arabic language, the word adoption is at-tabanni. So at-tabanni means to take someone to be your son or someone to be your child. And often it is asked, what is the position of Islam on abortion? Because some of you might have heard that Islam, not abortion, sorry, on adoption, some of you might have heard that Islam does not allow adoption. In fact, it does not accept adoptions. If you research about this topic, even from our Maraj of Taqleed, you might come across statements like, for example, I'm just taking this from a Sayyid al-Sistani, التبني غير مشروع في الإسلام. At-tabanni, meaning adopting somebody, is not legally acceptable in Islam. So well, what exactly does the statement mean? Does it mean that we cannot take care of orphans? That we cannot take an orphan into our house and raise him as our own child? Right? That's the question that we want to look at today. But before we do that, I just want to talk about some general principles, and I want to share with you some structures that we want to use today to be able to understand this topic of adoption. Now I'm waiting for Brother Jawad to give me the markers that he has so long promised to do so. We'll try without the markers. Let's see how far it goes. Okay. So you know, when we're studying law, we study principles in law. And you'll find that these principles are generally of two types. They are principles that you use in particular areas of law. For example, there's a principle that says, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ لَكَ طَاهِرْ حَتَّى تَعْلَمَ أَنَّهُ قَذَرْ. Everything should be treated as tahir until you come to know that that thing is najis. So if you walk into the washroom and you see a puddle of water over there, and you don't know what that water is, what do you treat it as? You treat it as tahir, no problem, right? If you step in it, there is no problem. This principle falls under the discussion on tahara and najasa. It's particular to a particular area of law. But then there are certain principles which are not particular. They are used in all areas of law. Let me give you another example. We're told, لا تنقض اليقين بالشك أبدا. Whenever you have certainty about something, and after that certainty comes a doubt, don't pay attention to the doubt. I know I had my wudu. I'm not sure if my wudu broke or not. What do? I maintain my certainty. I know I had wudu. Well, that wudu will suffice, right? I know it's the month of Ramadan. I don't know whether the moon was sighted today or wasn't sighted today. I tried to find out. I still couldn't figure out whether it was sighted or not sighted. What do I assume? I assume it's still the month of Ramadan, right? You never break your yaqeen when you have a doubt. Now this is something you used in the discussion on Sawm, you used in the discussion on Salat, you used in the discussion on Wudu, you used in all the areas of fiqh. These principles, which are general, they are discussed in a particular science, in a particular subject that is studied in the seminary. And this subject is known as Usul al-Fiqh. Which translates to the principles of jurisprudence. Let me give you one more example, and then we move on. Okay? One of the discussions that is out there is, let's say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands something in the Quran. He says, establish prayers, fast. It's in the command form. It's in the amr. Is this something that is particular to an area of law, or is it used in all areas of law? Come on. For example, there's a discussion. When God gives a command, fast, pray, go here, go there, does this imply obligation, meaning I have to do it? Or does this imply recommendation? It's good whether you do it. It's good to do it, but it's not necessary to do it. This kind of discussion, whatever the answer is, this kind of discussion, is it limited to a particular area of law, or is it used in all areas of law? Well, obviously it's used in all areas of law. Even if you talk about Hajj, there are commands in Hajj. You talk about fasting, you talk about zakat, there are commands either from Allah or the Prophet of Allah. You need to understand what those commands are. Then this discussion of what the command form, the imperative form implies, is a discussion in Usul al-Fiqh. Now, in Usul al-Fiqh, they have a very interesting discussion there. They say if you think about the laws of Islam are of two types. There are laws which are known as taklifi. And you can follow these in the notes I've given you. Taklifi means responsibility-oriented. They orient your actions. They tell you whether it is wajib, or it is mustahab, or it is mubah, or it is makruh, or it is haram, right? So, for example, when we talk about consumption of alcohol, they tell you it is haram. Praying 5 times a day, it is wajib, right? For example, reciting the Quran is mustahab, right? So on and so forth. These are one type of laws. Second type of law, they say, is wad'i. They don't orient your actions, but they orient certain states. They tell you what is the relationship between one thing and another thing. Just follow me for a few more minutes. You'll see where I'm going. For example, they say, if a fisherman goes into the ocean and he fishes and he gets a fish in his hand, what's the relationship between that man and the fish? A relationship of ownership. Very simple, not that difficult, right? A man goes to a woman, proposes to her, or the woman proposes to him, that I wish to marry you on this mahar, and he says, qabiltu. What sort of a relationship does it form between the two? Husband and wife, a spousal relationship, right? Now, Islam says these two are husband and wife. This man and his fish, they have a relationship of ownership. Clearly, this is not trying to orient your responsibility. This law is simply trying to say, what's the relationship between one thing and another thing? Here's the key part. Laws which are wad'i bring about laws which are taklifi. Let's work it. For example, ownership. Once, sorry, a marker that's darker? Yeah, they brought me these markers, they don't have the flat ones. I'm sorry, I'll try the blue one, let's see how far it goes. For example, when you own something, then you are permitted to sell it, and permitted to rent it, right? These are all laws which are taklifi, right? You are permitted to consume it, you are permitted to change it, so on and so forth. Okay? Let's do another example. Let's say there's a relationship of husband and wife, spousal relationship between two people. What laws does it entail? What laws does it entail? Well, the husband is obligated to provide for the wife, 1. 2, the wife has a right to inherit from the husband, and the husband has a right to inherit from the wife. 3, they're allowed to have certain relationships, right? 4, there are many other laws that come from that, okay? Therefore, in our fiqh, there are always 2 discussions. The first is a discussion about the ahkam which are wad'i. How do you form a relationship of ownership between a man and a fish, a man and a lamb, a man and a cow, a man and money? And second, when that relationship is formed, what laws does it entail? When two people want to get married, how do you form a marital relationship between them? What constitutes a legal marital relationship and what's an illegal marital relationship? When a legal marital relationship is formed, then the next step is, what are the laws that apply to them, right? Which is a discussion on the ahkamu taklifi, all right? When we talk about adoption, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about first, what forms a parent-child relationship, correct? Having talked about that, then we'll talk about what are the laws that apply to a parent-child relationship. So keep that in mind. All right. Second thing we want to talk about today is that one thing we have to appreciate is that modern technology is challenging some of our traditional understanding and some of our traditional definitions. What used to be very clear-cut 50 years ago is now very difficult at this moment in time. The first example I'll give you is when we talk about end-of-life decision-making. When a person is about to pass away, sometimes you have to make a decision whether we want to give care to this person, or do we want to withhold or even withdraw care from this person, right? 50 years ago, when a person died, his mind, it ceased to work, his brain activity ceased, his heart ceased to pump, and his lungs ceased to breathe. But today, because we have technology, what we can actually do is, even if a person's higher brain function ceases, we can still make his heart pump and his lungs breathe, and we can still make his lower brain functional. Then it raises a question, well, what is your definition of death? Is death the cessation of higher level activity in the brain? Or is it the cessation of lower level activity in the brain? Or the cessation of higher and lower level activity in the brain? Or simply the cessation of the heart and the lungs? Suddenly, that question and definition, which is so simple and straightforward, has become so complicated. The second place where it complicates things is when we talk about the relationship of motherhood. Traditionally, the definition of who's a mother was very straightforward. We'll talk about it today. In pre-Islamic Arabia, they used to have a concept called dhihab. A man, when he was tired of his wife, or let's say if he did not like his wife, he used to say to her, ظَهْرُكَ عَلَيَّ كَظَهْرِ أُمِّي, right? Your back to me is like the back of my mother. Meaning you to me are like my mother. Not just like my mother, I have made you my mother. Meaning what? Meaning, well, when you have a mother, you can't have certain relationships with the mother. I have made you a mother, that means I'm divorced from you now. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, this is nonsensical. Just by uttering a few words, you can't make somebody your mother, right? In ummahatuhum illa allai waladnahum. The mothers are only those who have given birth to them. The one who brings you into this world, the one who delivers you from her womb, that is the mother. Now that definition up to 50, 30 years ago was very straightforward. Except now, that definition has become challenged. Challenged why? Because in technology nowadays, in medicine, you've got something called IVF, in vitro fertilization. Well, what's in vitro fertilization? Sometimes you have a husband and wife who cannot conceive by themselves. Right? Either because it is difficult for fertilization to occur, or difficult for implantation to occur.